to the Bowden Glitz SEC Edition. I'm Joe Lisi, joined by former National Coach of the Year, Terry Bowden. Coach, there is no tomorrow. Week 1 is here. We're about 2 days away from the start of Saturday's action, but games kick off on Friday night between Auburn and Baylor. We'll get to that in a second, but the conference odds are up across multiple books. We talk about the number 1 team in the country, Texas, squaring off against Ohio State, followed by Georgia, a 3-1 shot, Alabama at plus 480, and LSU at plus 650. Do you feel the conference is top heavy, or can we see a dark horse potentially crack the party for a college football playoff appearance?
Well, the SEC is so good at the top, and I'm talking Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, mix them around. And then LSU just a tad below that, not far. And then now you talk about your dark horse teams that could be right there. I mean, what about South Carolina? What about Tennessee? What about Texas A&M, Florida? So many teams, even Auburn, if they get on a roll because they're starting to get the talent, it's a very, very strong conference where you better be good at the very beginning, especially if you're playing conference teams. Now, they've got some great non-conference challenges, and again, the outcome of these games are not necessarily going to keep them out of the conference championship, but it could ultimately keep them out of the playoffs, and that's where they're going to be very careful in this big games that we open up with in the conference.
2 of their quarterbacks, Arch Manning and Garrett Nussmeier, are 2 of the front runners to potentially win a Heisman Trophy. I mentioned Arch squaring off against the second-ranked Ohio State defending national champions defense. That game is a 12 o'clock kick on Saturday afternoon. We'll break that game down later in the week. But when you look at Clemson and LSU, both of those quarterbacks, Cade Klubnik and Garrett Nussmeier, have an opportunity to make a statement in that game and really solidify themselves, not just in terms of a Heisman frontrunner, but potentially a national championship caliber team. And when you see LSU at 9 overall, 13-1, you got to believe that Brian Kelly wants this game in Death Valley Saturday night.
Yeah, if you think about who really needs this game, Brian Kelly needs this game. He's lost all of his openers the first 3 years in a row. Actually, for LSU, it's 4 years in a row they haven't won their opening game, and they really need this game. Brian Kelly, I mean, you watched him in post-game press conferences last year. I could see the stress. He knows they're expecting a winner, and they're expecting the LSU fans I'm talking about. They brought him in for one reason. Let's go to the playoffs. Let's play for a national championship, and it hasn't happened yet. Got a great quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier. He's got a very, very strong team. Blake Baker, his defensive coordinator, has got some better people. They are going to be an outstanding team, but, man, do they open up with another good team. It's interesting that the top 3 teams in the SEC all have new quarterbacks. And we're going to see LSU, the 4th-ranked team in my mind, has a returning veteran. But Arch Manning's basically new. You got Gunnar Stockton's basically new, and you got Ty Simpson basically new at Alabama. So those are going to be things we've got to find out. But LSU, there are no surprises because I think Nussmeier is the real deal, and he's going to be playing against the real deal quarterback at Clemson.
We'll break that game down in next segment, but I do want to bring up Texas A&M and Mike Elko because you saw the board. They're a 15-1 shot. I feel like they're going under the radar. Last year, they were sort of, I want to say, the media darlings. A lot of people picked them potentially to get over their 8.5 win total. They finished the season at 8-5 overall, but a second year in the defensive scheme, led by Marcel Reed, their sophomore quarterback. Le'Veon Moss, we know about their ability and physicality in the rushing attack. Could Mike Elko and Texas A&M potentially make another statement and elevate to potentially a 10-win season?
Yeah, I mean, when you play great defense and you've got a good running attack, I think Marcel Reed, I think there's probably still some not a big enough body of work yet to see if he can take it all the way to the championship game. But the way they play, if you play great defense, you're in every game. And you've got a chance to win them. And now you've just got to win close games by running the football, controlling the clock, maybe winning the last 2 minutes of the first half, the last 2 minutes of the second half with your running attack. Texas A&M has that kind of football team. And Coach Elko, he's got that Kirby Smart type of background, defensive-minded. We're going to win with defense, run the football, good special teams. And when you do that, that's how you build a program And A&M there's no reason A&M can't build a championship program. They have got everything in the world that you need to build a champion.
We mentioned Brian Kelly potentially being on the hot seat, especially if he drops that game against Clemson Saturday night. Another coach on the hot seat has to be Hugh Freeze in Auburn, right? Expectations through the roof, taking over for Brian Harsin. They're a 2.5-point road favorite Friday night against Baylor. This is a Baylor team that's absolutely loaded offensively. Jackson Arnold and potentially Ashton Daniels will play in this matchup. Hugh Freeze has to get this game Friday night on the road in Waco.
Yeah, they've got a good quarterback at Baylor. Sawyer Robertson is a quarterback, probably after Sanders, the statistically best quarterback in the Big 12 last year from a statistical standpoint, throwing the football. And Baylor had a great year, and they are talking possibly competing for the Big 12 championships themselves. They're favored by a couple. I think Auburn may be favored a little bit now. That thing's been flipping back and forth. That 2.5 one way, then 2.5 the other. What you got is a pretty big toss-up with a big game, but it's a huge one for Hugh Freeze. And I've known Hugh Freeze a long time. He did a good job. He turned programs around. Wherever he's been successful. He's got a good body of work. But this Auburn thing, he kind of took over a mess. They had some bad recruiting years. They didn't have a good football team. And what he hoped would be a quick thing, he's had 2 losing seasons. And now he's on the hot seat. And I think he wins 7, he may go to a bowl, but I think it's 8 to 9 wins have got to keep the people happy because they don't give you long to turn that thing around. But I do think he's got him a pretty good football team. Jackson Arnold's the guy. That he needs to be the guy. When the quarterback situation turned out so bad last year, it's kind of like Florida State. When that was so bad last year, then you go out and get Jackson Arnold. Your team needs to know, and your fan needs to know, hey, I know what I'm doing. That guy is my guy. He's gonna be good because I know what I'm doing. So, it may not be him, but it needs to be because he's convinced everyone there that when quarterback situation did not turn out well last year, that he went out and found the guy. Now, I watched Jackson Arnold in high school. He was a 5-star quarterback, and I'm not so sure he was the big problem at Oklahoma completely. They fired their offensive coordinator mid-season. Now, either your quarterback's the problem or your offensive coordinator's the problem. Or maybe it's a little bit of the coordinator or the scheme and the injuries, because I think a good reset for Jackson Arnold is going to give Auburn a chance to have an outstanding quarterback there and to give them a chance to go out there and win this game. And I do have Auburn winning this football game.
You and I disagree again. I'm going with the better quarterback. Here's the thing, and we talk about the identity problem for Hugh Freeze, going and having success at Liberty with Malik Willis and Caden Salter, and then all of a sudden then having Peyton Thorne that transferred in last year from Michigan State. They were -9 in turnover margin. I didn't like that factor, and they weren't a very good road team last year. But you're going up against Baylor that had won 6 games down the stretch by an average margin of victory of 14.8 points per game. And Sawyer Robertson in that offense averaged 261 passing yards per game. They can also run it effectively. They now have Bryson Washington being the sole back in that backfield. I think they can put up points. I like Baylor to strike the upset, Coach, but I also think we blow through this 56.5, 57 total Friday night.
Yeah, I think the over. I think you're right about the over, and we're only talking. 3 points one way or the other will change who's going to win that game as far as the against the spread. But again, I think that the quarterback Jackson, with quarterback with Arnold Jackson, I think putting him in a reset, putting him in a different environment, I think you've got one of the top quarterbacks. He was the top quarterback in the Elite 11. Coming out of high school. He was the top guy Gatorade player out of Texas. He is a big-time athletic quarterback who got caught up in a bad situation at Oklahoma.
We'll come back with 2 big games, Alabama, Florida State, and LSU Clemson coming up next. Back on the Bowden Blitz SEC Edition, Coach and I are breaking down the slate for week number 1. Left off talking about Auburn and Baylor on Friday night. There's a huge battle taking place at noon in Tallahassee. Top-ranked Alabama opened as a 13.5-point road favorite against Mike Norvell and their new quarterback, Thomas Castellanos. Coach, Castellanos is doing a ton of talking in the offseason. Can he back it up and potentially strike the upset against Kalen DeBoer in Alabama?
Well, I think for Mike Nolan's the head coach's concern, he better. But that's the big question: is these two quarterbacks? Norvell. I'm sorry for Mike Norvell. Both these quarterbacks are going to be the keys to this football game. First, they got Tommy Castellanos, and I don't think you ever can mention him without Gus Malzahn, because they got Gus Malzahn to put his offense in. He's going to run his offense. He needs a dual threat guy. Tommy has a whole new rebirth, I think, in this offense. If those two can sync and they can work together and be on the same wavelength, you could see a whole different offensive attitude there with Tommy Castellanos and Gus Malzahn. But defensively, they've got to play very well too, and they've got to play good all through, because Alabama, to me, comes in loaded. They come in with loaded talent, great talent, both sides of the football, just as Alabama always has. And they've got a new quarterback, Ty Simpson, that has to show what he can do. Now, he's just the opposite. He's not a portal transfer guy, one school to another. It's his 4th year at Alabama. He's set for 3. He's backed up. He's waited his term. And I think he's got the confidence of his football team. Plus, we've got the head coach who brought Ryan Grubb in, the coordinator from Washington that he wanted to bring in. I think they're going to be very comfortable with the quarterback they have now, who is not the runner that they had last year, but is a good manager, a good leader of the football team, and a quarterback that's cerebral and runs the offense, pass and throw. And I like the way they do that. So it should be a great game. I'll be honest with you, I think Florida State, they've had so much of a tough time in the offseason, facing all the adversity, that they've come together, and they'll play really good, and they'll keep this game close. But I think the talent level is still not at Florida State to make the big turnaround in 1 year. 7 or 8 wins, if they turn it around, that's what you're going to get. Because Alabama, it's going to be close for about a half, but I think they pull away. Probably Ryan Williams is going to get him one more big one, maybe 2, and they'll pull out and go with the numbers. They'll win this game by a couple of touchdowns.
Well, we'll see, and I sort of lean to Florida State because of how bad they were. We mentioned they were 2-10 overall last year. Their only FBS win came against the home win earlier in the year against Fernando Mendoza and Jaden Knott in California in that matchup in September. But when you look at this team as a whole, when you just look at the breakdown, and you mentioned Ty Simpson, Ty Simpson takes over for one of the most prolific runners at the quarterback position in Jalen Milroe that averaged well over 4.5 yards per carry. He also had 20 rushing touchdowns. Now, Simpson is mobile. He had 8 rushes last year for 55 yards and a touchdown. But if he's expected to duplicate the type of productivity that we saw with Jalen Milroe, I just don't see it. I think Florida State needs to run the football, control the clock to keep that Alabama offense on the sidelines and basically take the pressure off of Thomas Castellanos. Do you see that as a potential game plan as well, or would you want to go up throwing on that veteran secondary in Alabama?
No, I think you've got it just right. I think Alabama will do that. They'll want to control the football, run the football, and again, I think they're going to keep it close for about a half, maybe a half and a quarter, because of the style and because of their philosophy. But remember, to me, based on a 2-10 season, if they play an outstanding football game and they keep this thing close and they look good, they don't want to hear this, but they're going to walk back away from that field and they're going to make progress and they'll be heading in the right direction. That's where they need to start. But I don't think if they play their best, they're going to beat Alabama. I'm just saying, with all the talent Alabama has, and again, Kalen DeBoer, that season they had last year didn't exactly make their fans happy, and they've had a pretty serious off season. So I see Alabama now focusing on being as good as they can be. Their quarterback's not going to be asked to run the ball like the quarterback last year. He could not throw it as well as he could run it, and they utilize his running skills. I think you got a quarterback that can run and throw now. I think it'll be a balanced offense. And I think Alabama, it'll be a good game. It'll be an enjoyable game. But I think at the end, they'll pull away 10, 14 points.
So we're both looking for more of a lower scoring game, potentially under the 50.5 in that matchup. A game that is expected to have potential fireworks with two Heisman Trophy frontrunners is the game in Clemson Saturday night in Death Valley. We'll see which the real Death Valley is. Is it LSU or is it in fact Clemson and Dabo Swinney? Clemson opened as a 3.5-point home favorite. We're seeing 4.5s in a couple of books across the country. We talk about the dominance for Clemson at home, 70-5 dating back to 2015. Which quarterback has more pressure? Cade Klubnik playing at home or Garrett Nussmeier and the LSU Tigers that haven't won a week one matchup in Brian Kelly's tenure in Baton Rouge?
Well, let me answer your first comments. They both have a great home field advantage. Clemson, I've coached and I've played in both of them, and they are both crazy. LSU just a little bigger. Their fans get a little drunker with that Cajun attitude that they have. But I'm going to tell you, this is going to be a wild place, and I probably make that the 3-point difference for Clemson. These two quarterbacks are fantastic. Cade Klubnik is a Heisman candidate as well as Nussmeier. Both teams are better than they were last year. But as I look at these two teams, overall talent, I see, to me, they've got quarterbacks that are both Heisman possibilities, NFL players. Klubnik a little bit better. They both got a defense that's outstanding, but Clemson a little bit better. Home field advantage puts them in a little better situation. That's the 3-point difference that I see in this football game. And I will say this, Brian Kelly needs to win this game, and he knows he does. He wants to win it because the fans, and I live in Louisiana, they are talking about, hey, we gotta be in the playoffs. We paid you to win a championship. He's had to sit on that, so they'll be prepared. But I'm saying at the end of the night, I think Clemson has got the best team they had since they were national champions, and that won't knock LSU out of anything, but they'll win this game by 3.
We saw that Clemson could go toe-to-toe from an offensive perspective against Texas, but it was the front seven that broke down. Texas ran for over 200 yards. How big of a difference was Tom Allen to that defense this year? We'll see it play out on Saturday night. We'll come back with more games in the SEC coming up next. Back on the Bowden Blitz SEC Edition, Coach and I are breaking down the slate for week number 1. We left off talking about the battle in Clemson between LSU and the Clemson Tigers. Now we'll transition to Sunday. Huge matchup in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. We have top-ranked South Carolina playing Virginia Tech. Shane Beamer squares off against his dad's former team in the Hokies. Hokies last year, 6-7 under Brent Pry. But Shane Beamer and Lenora Sellers potentially have their sights set on an SEC title. How do you see this game playing out Sunday afternoon in Atlanta, Coach?
It's going to be an emotional game for Shane Beamer. I mean, it's been played in Atlanta, not at Virginia Tech. But he grew up running up and down the sideline of the other team's colors with those other uniforms. That's the football that he grew up with as dad there. And it'll put a special place. He'll want to make a great showing, and he'll have his team prepared, and he'll have a little better football team too. I remember with my brother Tommy at Clemson, I had to play my dad at Florida State. There was a lot of fun going on and a lot of emotion going on, but the best team usually won because you throw that stuff out, and the best team right here is South Carolina. Quarterback, one of the best in the country. Lenora Sellers, defensive end, outstanding defensive end. They've got a better football team. Virginia Tech struggled last year down the line, down toward the end of the season. They struggled, and I think they've got a little bit of hot seat going on with that coach. But I'll tell you, South Carolina is one of my dark horse teams. They almost got themselves in that conference championship game and a chance to go to the playoffs. But I think this year they've got their eyes sight on a bigger prize. And I think Virginia Tech, they'll win this game because they've got a better football team, but they've also got one of the best quarterbacks, at least the most exciting and most dynamic quarterbacks in the country.
Oh, you talk about Lenora Sellers, right? Dual threat. He's about 240 pounds. You're talking about a team in South Carolina that was 9-4 overall before the bowl loss to Illinois. This team had won 6 straight games at the end of the regular season and knocked off Clemson to hand the Tigers only their 5th home loss dating back to 2015, right? This is an offense in South Carolina that loves to run the football. They average 182 yards on the ground. Lenora Sellers is very mobile, and they're going up against the front 7 in Virginia Tech that sort of wore down at the end of the regular season. Virginia Tech was 6-7 overall and lost those 7 games, Coach, by an average margin of defeat of 7 points per game. But I felt like their season was lost on the Hail Mary that wasn't against Miami. You know, it was a 50-50 ball. It went in favor of the Hurricanes. It seemed from that point on, Virginia Tech sort of wrapped it up and just walked through the motions at the end of the regular season.
You know, and that'll happen when you start getting a negative. The Boo Birds start out there and they get on Coach Fry, the head coach. They blame him. They lose a close ball game, and it just builds on itself. And it began to move backwards after that game. You're exactly right. And now they do have to go out there and make sure they turn this program around for Brent Fry's sake to get this thing turned around. South Carolina is just a tough one to get it turned around with. Should be a good game. There'll be a lot of emotion, a lot of excitement. There are for every opening game. But when it comes down to it, you know, who's got the best quarterback, who's got the best overall talent, you got to go with South Carolina on this game.
Yeah, when you look at this game as a whole, right, and you see South Carolina, and they're 7.5-point favorites in this matchup, but you look big picture, they're a 50-1 shot, 55-1 shot to potentially win a national championship. 2 games really stand out from last year, the 3-point home loss to LSU and the 2-point road loss to Alabama. You got to believe that Shane Beamer is preaching that they can play with anybody in the conference.
I think they believe that right now. You know, I've said before that in the old days, or when I was coaching and first started, South Carolina used to seem more like an ACC team back in the day, and Clemson seemed like the SEC team. Well, South Carolina is a serious, physical, talented SEC team, and they know it, and they feel like they can do better than they did last year, and they've got a lot of excitement going on. So these games become important. Again, this is not a conference game. And it's not going to affect their conference record if they look to get into the conference championship. But right now, when you're a team like this, I tell you, in the SEC, 8-9 games will get you in the playoffs. If you have a great year, beat the right teams, 9 games in the SEC will get you to the conference, to the championship playoff. I don't think it'll happen in the ACC, but I do think it could happen to a team like South Carolina.
We'll see. 13th in the nation. They're a 50-1 shot to potentially win a national championship. Coach and I will be on later in the week breaking down the big games in the SEC along with the under-the-radar games. We'll see you later in the week. For Coach Bowden, I'm Joe Lisi. Have a great day, everyone.